Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Joe Gould. I'm here with Adam Old Man Winters. And today we are talking about Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed from 1969.
He really must be destroyed after what he did in this one. That
Oh,
naughty
yeah.
fella.
How's the Louisville city treating you these days? Any new riots?
Let's see. Been a while since we've had a peaceful protest, but a lot of limbs came down in last week's storms. Knocked out the power for a few people, but not for me.
Okay. We had a lot of rain. And then we had a lot more rain. Yeah. I'll tell you
More
what,
rain's
though.
gonna come.
Yeah, Louisville has the protest. Mount Juliet, we have the wild animals on the loose.
Huh. What kind?
Well, so I was walking my dog last night, and it was pretty dark. We got this one bush thing at the back of the yard, and we are pretty close to it. And I thought I saw what I thought was a rabbit,
Uh-oh.
but what I actually saw was like the ankle of a deer. As we got closer, that thing shot out. Harley about drugged me across the yard. If deer were dangerous animals, I would have had major problems right there.
Huh. Was it a
We
buck or
also,
a doe?
I'm not sure. It was dark. Couldn't tell. We also have a neighborhood raccoon. Have you ever had a raccoon in your neighborhood?
You know, I've encountered more possums in my day than raccoons. Probably for the best. I like possums.
Well, this raccoon apparently thinks that we are like he's in a trip in Destin. He's been going in all the garages, eating all the cat food, climbing in the cars, going through doggy doors.
Inside the cars?
Well, underneath the car.
Okay. He
So
climbs up into the engine and stuff.
yeah, I guess
Oh,
they take naps. I don't know.
He could gnaw some of that piping and wiring up there. That could be rough.
Yes, he could. So I got in the car with Austin 2 days ago to take him down to a driving class. And as we closed the doors and turned the engine on, we heard this thump.
Oh,
We looked at each other like, what is that? And then I looked at my mirror, and a raccoon was scurrying out. That thing was up in my engine.
man. I
So
wonder if he
now
left his tail in there.
I don't think that's not a lizard. But, somebody caught him on video on Facebook, and he was in someone's garage, eating the cat food, drinking the water, standing in the water dish, then trying to chew on some wires above its head. So we don't think this raccoon is well. Yet, they think he has rabies, maybe distemper. I'm not sure what distemper is, but it's sure putting us in a bad temper.
Maybe you should put out some trap for him. Is it legal to have poison trash so you can kill the raccoons off?
I'm not sure what the rules are for killing. I'm pretty sure
setting a trap for him.
Well, so I'm pretty sure someone did put out a trap, but I think they got corrected about 3 days later because I'm not convinced they were using bait. So
Oh well.
Apparently I don't know. So yeah, we got raccoons, we got deer, we got rabbit, we got carpenter bees. I mean, this is a crazy area, man. It's dangerous.
Well, those carpenter bees, they'll make your deck fall over, and then the raccoons
will eat
all your
need
food
any help for that.
Falls off the deck.
Yeah, previous owner did not take care of the deck. So it does not need the help of the carpenter bees.
Such is life.
I know, man. It's a dangerous world out here in Mount Juliet.
It's a jungle out there. You find any jackalopes? The legendary jackalope?
No, I haven't seen those yet. Those.
Always wanted to see one.
In our previous neighborhood, about a mile down the road, we had turtles.
They're nice so long as they don't snap onto you.
Oh no!
Don't let go.
You still there?
I must have lost the sound if you're still talking.
There?
Oh yeah, I'm still here, laying around since the 5.5 minute mark or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So the audience, I got kicked out of the room by the lightning.
I think a raccoon was gnawing at your connection.
You know, another pet peeve of my neighborhood as I turn on my... I'm going to stop and start here so I can turn on my echo cancellation. Good grief. Let's try this again. Taken out by lightning, power flickering, in a neighborhood with all the power lines are underground.
Sounds like the perfect setup for a Frankenstein movie.
Kind of is, actually. I should have sent my little minion outside with a um, electric pole to run around the yard.
Which kid would that be?
Oh, I couldn't say that out loud. I'm telling you, man, I told you, it's a dangerous place down here in Mount Juliet.
There's a jungle out there.
People think Nashville proper is dangerous with all the people in the streets and the misunderstandings and some violence. No, man,
Yeah.
watch out for the deer, the raccoons, the lightning from the power lines underground. I mean, it's this crazy world.
My understanding is, I guess that's Davidson County is the highest place for vehicle on deer incidents in the state.
I'm not sure on that. I'm in Wilson County, technically. So
Okay.
we're in the Nashville metro, but we're Wilson County.
Maybe they've moved east. All the deer.
But I don't know. It's a crazy world. All we know is that Frankenstein must be destroyed.
He must.
From 1969, another British horror film with the dream team of Terence Fisher and Peter Cushing. The fifth in the Hammer films focusing on Frankenstein. And he has fully embraced his inner heel in this movie.
Yes, there's no Hans or no Cleaver to keep him in line.
I do feel like we've had a few Carls again, though. I feel like
We
they
have our
recycled
third
the same
Carl.
few names.
Yeah, third Carl in this series.
Kind of hard to keep track of. I give a little nod to the Inspector,
Ugh.
previously known as Dr. Hertz, and currently known as Inspector Frisch, and played by Thorley Walters. I like that name, Thorley.
So I wasn't sure if it was the same actor, because give him credit, he does play it just different enough that you're not sure. But he has the same mannerisms, and you never feel like he's totally sober at any point in either movie.
Yeah. And just as a little side note, all the scenes featuring Thorley Walters were late additions to the original script. Most people do not find them necessary,
I
as they
didn't.
do have that comedy element into there. But it does add some to the runtime people complain about too.
Ooh, is it an hour 40 minutes, something like that?
Yeah. So again, I'm not sure where the differences are, but in the running time for the UK, it's supposed to be 98 minutes, and for the US, it's 101 minutes. But yeah, it's right at an hour 40.
Yeah, I am not feeling all the Inspector Fritsch. I'm going to call him Inspector Big Boy. I just did not understand where those scenes were leading toward any kind of payoff.
So I do know, I read somewhere else that he was good friends with the director Terence Fisher. So, and we also know, we'll just get this scene out of the way because it really doesn't add much to the movie. But there's a scene in this movie where Dr. Frankenstein rapes a woman, and that was over.
Not just any woman, the main female lead.
Yes, yeah, and that was despite the objections from Peter Cushing and Veronica Carlson, who was the lead, and the director Terence Fisher. It was not in the original script, but there was a Hammer executive, James Carreras, who was under pressure to keep the American distributors happy. I'm not sure why the American distributors wanted a scene like that, but it also makes me wonder if they wanted a little bit of comedy in there. So maybe that's where they brought Thorley in, since he was friends with Terence Fisher, and they added those scenes.
This would have been Warner Brothers, right? The American distributor that's being mentioned, or is it a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, Seven Arts or something like that? I'm not familiar with Seven Arts.
I think it's Warner Brothers Seven Arts was the American distributor. I think Warner Path Distributors was the UK version. I'm not really sure what the differences are here.
I wish I could blame all this on David Zaslav, but that's a little bit too soon.
Yeah,
like so he would have threatened to delete the movie forever if they didn't add a pointless rape scene into it.
Yeah, and it really is pointless. It adds. I will say it solidifies his being a bad guy. Like, if there's any question as to his motives, like, it's not just that he's been misguided, right? He's a bad guy in this movie. Whereas in the other ones, you could say maybe he's a good guy who does bad things.
Well, that's the only thing I could think of. At the same time, when you open the movie with your guy waiting on someone else and then taking his head off with a sickle, I feel like that gets the point across way more than anything else. Now maybe the point is they wanted the audience to despise Baron Frankenstein by the end of this movie. And they figured the best way to do that was to victimize the somewhat innocent woman.
There's no heroes in this film.
What about Inspector Big Boy?
Inspector Gadget? I mean,
Rich.
Maybe. He's not taken seriously by his team.
Okay.
Though he is not a complete idiot by any stretch. He actually does make some good points.
What about Ella Brandt? Is she a heroine? Oh, heroine. Ah, there we go. That's in this movie. Heroin is in this movie. Or is it cocaine?
It was cocaine.
Oh,
pretty sure it's cocaine.
I've never done either one. I have taken the Lord's Supper with a powdery white substance in my pocket before. That's a different story for a different day.
Speaking of a different story for a different day, I had an employee once who once said cocaine is a hell of a drug. And then he later got arrested for having cocaine.
It is.
Yeah, so,
So we're talking about cocaine, right? Just to be clear. So let's separate our cocaine from our heroin. So is Ella, does she get heroin status in this movie about illegal drug smuggling, cover-ups, blackmail?
You can't be loving villains. You fall in love with a villain, you become a villain. It's just, you can't enable them.
Fair enough. Dr. Brandt has his own trouble in this movie. We're not sure why he goes insane specifically, but...
Yeah, we do.
Well,
he has pressure on the brain had to get relieved.
Is that a real medical concept? Is that verifiable?
In the movie, it seemed to fix it post-lobotomy.
Oh, that's the one title reference in this movie, too, when he's done a brain transplant, Dr. Frankenstein has, and he needs to relieve the pressure. And as he puts it, the damaged cells must be destroyed. That's our possible title reference. We talk about a lot in these movies.
I think I missed that in this one. I think I missed that reference. So yeah,
must be destroyed. They always work that in somehow.
They do. So in terms of Igor type figures, where do you think Carl fits in? Like, how does he rank? I put him towards the low end of the totem pole. He's actually weaker than Frankenstein, Peter Cushing, that was a crazy arm strength in the opening scene, but he quickly showed one trick pony with a good sword.
So it's at least nice to see Dr. Frankenstein has got his groove back as relates to surgery and his motor skills. He no longer needs somebody else doing the work for him. He just needs somebody to hold the template steady while he works his magic with the saw or the hand crank drill. This all feels like a bad 1990s video game somehow. Full motion.
You know who Carl reminded me of?
A Don Knotts character?
No, the inspector would probably fall in that role. I thought he looked, I'm not saying he acted like, or even spoke like, but I thought visually, he just reminded me of a very young and skinny Donald Trump.
I haven't seen enough of young Donald to know the difference there. But
well, if you just took current Donald and you de-aged him and de-weighted him, I think you could get I think the face is there. I want to call him Carl Trump, but,
Yeah, I forget his last name. It's like, it's not Hertz, it's Holtz or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a better identifier for him than Carl number 3, since we've been through. That has got to be an inside joke with the production team, naming everybody Carl for no apparent reason.
I mean, like I said, they had a couple names. They just kind of rotate them around.
Now, Anna is a new name, and her name is Spengler, which, again, we talked about Ghostbusters in the last movie. That's all I can think of when I hear Spengler. unless she's being named after, is it the writer? Somebody by the name
Mm,
of Spengler? I've sort of forgotten that.
Screenplay is Burt Batt, so I don't think so.
No, I meant an actual
Oh,
successful writer of other genres, or a philosopher or something like that.
yeah, I'm not sure on that one. I'm
Not
sure there are
Egon
some.
Spengler. She also got her start as a Bond girl. I believe we mentioned that. Was it Elizabeth from the first movie, or was it Margaret in the second movie?
Oh, it
Started
all
out.
blends together. I
Yeah,
have to go back and look.
yeah.
They have a template that they make these movies from. They do not veer too far from it.
Except the last one was sort of different, and I guess the next one, chronologically, will be very different. But
True.
yeah,
But the last
it.
one was an odd movie. They trying to get their mojo back.
Did they get it back? What is this movie evidence of, as far as their mojo with the Frankenstein flicks?
So actually, I did like this movie. I know that one scene was kind of unnecessary and just kind of like put a bad taste in your mouth. You know, we have more respect for Frankenstein than that. But
Absolutely. He is a
but
man
that
who has needs, but he ain't gonna get it through that means. At least I don't
no,
think so.
I'm not sure that this template works from a financial perspective at this point, though. I don't know what the budget was. I don't know exactly what this movie made because I didn't come across it and I didn't have time to look it up. But
I don't feel
I'm
like
not
it
getting the
works for.
feeling that they're making tons of money from these movies.
Yeah, they usually air these as double features when it was theatrical, because I don't know that this would have been on television for several years later, whatever the censorship would have been. But yeah,
Yeah,
you put them in the cheap theaters.
I mean, all the classic horror films, they have series. You know, you might have, I forget exactly how many there are, but you know, you might have like 8 or 9 Freddy movies, 8 or 9 Jason movies. I think there's originally there was 3 Chucky movies, and they brought him back for some other stuff. But
That one
this
gets
is definitely a
confusing.
part 5.
It gets confusing when they change the name of the series because of either studio rights or stuff like that.
I could do a whole episode on Child's Play and Chucky and the rights and all that stuff. Oh, I could do a whole episode,
So
Adam. Don't tempt
I
me.
know I know it happened with Friday the 13th and Jason. There were 2 studios, but did it happen with the Elm Street Freddy as well?
Uh, no. I mean, I'm not sure what the rights are now, but no, they're pretty. Freddy rights are pretty easy.
Because I know
It
at one
gets
point they
well,
would
it's all
stop
tied to Wes
numbering
Craven.
them.
Well, yeah, but it's all Freddy rights are all tied to Wes Craven. He didn't have help.
Oh,
You
okay.
had multiple people involved with ownership of the first Friday the 13th stuff.
Okay.
That's a horse of a different color.
Yeah.
It's a path traveled at a later date. So
There are a few
Carl's,
horses in this movie.
there are another template.
Yeah.
It really is color by numbers of these Hammer films.
I felt cheated that I didn't get to watch a chase of the dogs after the horse carriage. Like I could have once again seen Peter Cushing up against a projector screen.
You know, when I saw those dogs, I was trying to figure out, like, are the police dragging these dogs along? They don't seem real excited, and there's like a half foot of leash, and then you had this barking in the background, but you're pretty sure it's not coming from them dogs.
Maybe it's the dogs are mentally insane too.
I think they got some domesticated German shepherds with their owners, and the shepherds are like, "Why are you dragging me through the woods? It's wet and dark. I'm gonna go home."
Yeah. I felt cheated out of this movie as regards the actual monster or the creature, even though it.
Or lack thereof.
Okay, the movie's an hour and 40 minutes. I think we got 20 with the so-called creature being awake and active, things like that.
I think you could say that in this movie, Frankenstein is his own monster.
Yeah,
So we were
he is
talking about
that.
heroes and villains. Honestly, probably the most heroic character in this film would either be the monster or his wife.
Fair enough.
The wife is definitely, well, she's not very accepting of her husband after he got a new body. That's kind of rude.
Well,
But
she
beyond
knows
that,
it's on that. She saw his dead body though. That you can't get her quite past that. You got to give her that one.
oh, I get it, but he's mentally
She buried.
there.
She buried him.
She wanted his mind for so long to come back. She gets his mind and she rejects it because it's not the body she wants.
She probably should have been the main character of the movie, or at least a much bigger role than she ended up having for that reason, of the be careful what you wish for trope.
Now they definitely could have fleshed that out. I mean, so if I don't think an hour 40 minutes is necessarily too long for the movie, I feel like the scene that we were talking about and then all the Inspector Gadget scenes, if you take those out and it fleshed out her character a little bit more, I think it would have been an upgrade.
I will say this, the character I did not expect I should have paid more attention to early in the movie is the guy who plays, I guess he's called Professor Richter, and he works at the asylum, but you don't know how important he's going to be until Frankenstein decides they need his body to transfer Dr. Brandt's brain into.
Yes, and I'm not convinced that their reason really makes a lot of sense, but it is poetic justice, as he was the one to basically tell Carl that he has no hope of ever being normal again.
And that his wife should no longer even visit him. That was his recommendation that he gives to both Carl and the principal of the asylum, who somehow I feel like the movie should have streamlined the principal and Dr. Richter into the same character, because we get a little bit more screen time early on with the principal. You know, he scolds Carl at one point for trying to give an injection to the disturbed lady who's locked up there. And we only see Dr. Richter at the beginning, and then Frankenstein just says, by the way, Professor Richter will do well. Go get him. And we don't get to see Carl go to his house and kill him and drag him out. Again, I was cheated out of a very important scene in this movie.
True. Do you think she recognized him at the end as the doctor? Because it really, he looks tremendously different.
I don't think she ever had any direct interaction with Professor Richter. And the other thing is, I don't think Dr. Brandt had any recollection.
So Richter wasn't the one to tell her not to come back and visit, or not to visit
not
anymore?
Directly. See, Richter was there first when she's not there. He's talking to Carl and the principal. And then once he gives the recommendation, we see Ella visiting her husband, and the principal is there, and he is conveying the message he got from Richter. Doesn't that just seem unnecessary?
Well, it does, but it might have been a conscious decision they made so that she wouldn't recognize him at the end.
Wouldn't that make it more horrible, though, if she did?
I'm with you. I think they could have, if they had committed to developing her character a little more, I think it would have worked.
And the other weird thing is Dr. Brandt has no direct interaction with Carl that he can remember. So that even though Carl and Brandt have this weird triangle of violence with Dr. Frankenstein, they don't have any personal history together.
No.
Even though Carl kills Richter, but Brandt is in Richter's body, and he wouldn't care a thing about Carl, so far as I can tell.
Yeah. No, it's
This is not Wrath of Khan stuff right here. This is characters who don't have proper motivation to hate each other.
Well, you're just poo-pooing all over this film.
It was the length. It was the runtime that did it to me. When you take that long, you better use your time wisely. Not giving me Inspector Big Boy.
Well, I will say that I think the movie started and ended on high points.
I love the setup. I thought it was an excellent setup the first half, and I felt like everything went downhill from there.
So, in the first part, I don't know that we're going to go through this whole movie scene by scene, but in the first scene of the movie, you have a masked man carrying a lunchbox a la Yogi Bear in the streets. And then you see this doctor. I think it is a doctor. I don't think that's relevant for what they're doing, but he did happen to be a doctor. I guess he wanted good parts.
He's like Otto or something, isn't he? Dr. Otto?
Yeah. So then he took the sickle and swiped it. We're led to believe that our skinny little Frankenstein took his head off with one swipe, but it was a nice blood splatter on that window.
Very impressive.
At the same time, there's a thief trying to break into whatever, I'll put this in air quotes, lab that Frankenstein's working in. It's like a rundown old building or something. I have no idea why he was interested in getting in there. But
Yeah.
anyways, they meet and they get into a little scuffle, which Frankenstein does not take his head off with one swipe. We'll just put it that way.
He's in a Halloween mask the whole time.
And he's in this really crappy Frankenstein-esque mask, like Frankenstein's monster-esque. And I thought to myself when I saw that, I said, if this is the monster, I like to set up that's a really sorry mask because I can see the eye holes. And then he takes the mask off and you see that it's Baron Frankenstein. So it's all better at that point.
I guess this movie opens the same way that Evil of Frankenstein opened, of having their lab busted up at the very beginning.
I think Terrence Fisher relied on certain things. That's all.
No, he didn't do Evil of Frankenstein, though. You can't say he copied himself on that one.
You're right. You're right. And I should say, just to make, to put a bow on it, the Yogi Bear basket, the head was inside the basket. So,
He got that idea from Christina, carry around the head in the basket. The hat box.
So they never really say what he was doing or what exactly experiment he was doing in there. Because really, everything he does in the rest of the movie has nothing to do with any of these experiments.
Other than the fact that Inspector Gadget notices similarities in what he saw in the underground lab and
but in
the crimes
in the underground lab, he's doing things that he had been doing in previous movies. Looks like he's assembling a body that he ends up having to dump in the water. He's just got a new head that I don't know that he needed. But then the rest of the movie, like, the kills, for the most part, were not really intentional. They're still in equipment. But his whole goal the rest of the time is to fix the professor's brain, which doesn't even require, at that moment, getting a new body.
Yet he's not doing it out of any kind of virtue because he was friends with the guy, even though it is stated they had off-screen prior correspondence. What he really wants is the formula that will allow him to freeze a brain indefinitely. And that's what he wants out of Dr. Brandt.
Again, which has nothing to do with what he was doing in the first scene.
It does not.
Like, he could have gone on the entire rest of the movie and not killed anyone. Until he tried to replicate the formula. But, he didn't. I don't know. It's just, again, a great scene, but it doesn't make a lot of sense the more you talk about it.
So when he comes to the new, we'll call it the boarding house, Anna Spangler's boarding house, at this point, I'm led to assume all he wants is a room. And he's going to work out of the room, but we're not sure what. There's no way he could have known about the drug smuggling problem of her fiancé. That is just a very happy coincidence that he discovers and works from there.
Yes. So Anna's fiancé, Carl, is, as we've mentioned, he works at the asylum, which is currently keeping Frankenstein's
pen pal.
Pen pal, Frederick Brand. And so Carl, we find out, is smuggling drugs to sell on the street to help her with her financial woes.
Well, her mother, right? Her mother's in the hospital.
Yeah.
Never seen, but mentioned.
I'm not sure she's mentioned again, actually. So then Frankenstein blackmails Carl and the lady into helping him with his scheme to kidnap the doctor, to fix him, and to get what he wants, which ends up being a murder spree. Not really on purpose, but
how many bodies are dead by the end of this? The first one is the night watchman at the asylum.
Well, the first one was the guy he killed in the street.
Well, yeah. We've established that. Different spree.
Was the night watchman actually killed?
Well, Carl stabs him, right? And then Frankenstein uses that against him.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a different person.
Once you've killed once, it gets easier after that.
Yeah. I was thinking of a different scene. I was thinking of the guard when they broke out the doctor.
No, I thought he just KO'd him. I'm not certain about that.
Yeah, so they killed the random doctor in the street. They killed the guard. Technically, they killed Brandt. Technically,
Yeah,
they killed Richter. Richter. Get my names here right.
it's unclear how Richter dies, but it's suggested Carl kills him at his home or after he abducts him out of his home.
Well, let's back up. They may not have killed his body, but they killed his brain at the minimum.
Yeah, okay. I don't
Because it is
remember what they
possible
did
that they
with it.
didn't kill him. It's possible that they didn't kill his body. They just removed it, and well, it may have been the removal of the brain that killed him. Let's put it that way.
Because they don't have a formula to hold it indefinitely in this movie, unlike the first one,
Correct.
where you could
Yeah.
take as much time as you needed.
So I haven't been counting these people, but our head count's getting kind of higher now. And then we have Anna get
Poor,
killed.
poor Anna gets killed. Yeah, that. Even though Frankenstein, he does that directly, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he was
That son of a
angry. I
gun.
mean, it was a heated moment
That son of a gun.
because he thought that she ruined everything and
After
killed his
what he
monster.
did to her.
Yeah. So she dies, and then at the end of the movie, which we'll get into a little bit, Frankenstein and his creature presumably die.
Yeah, we see no bodies. You can never tell.
Yeah. So yeah, most of the characters in this movie die.
Except Carl. What a
Nope.
miserable existence he's got to look forward to.
Yeah, and Brand's wife.
That's right.
And
She
Inspector
lost
Gadget.
her house in this ordeal because her semi-dead husband wanted revenge on one guy. So he burned the house down.
Yeah. It looks like she comes for money. I think she's got some money.
Still, what a bad deal, though. I hope she's got insurance claims on that. Maybe Carl and her can go into the insurance fraud business.
Well, she can go live in Anna's house.
The boarding house?
Yeah, she can go run it.
Yeah, it might be a little awkward.
I mean, I don't get the feeling anyone's going to be paying for Anna's mother treatment anymore.
I guess those 4 guys would probably move back in. You know, they don't care.
Yeah.
That Anna has to kick out early in the movie because of blackmail.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I was under the impression you were doctors. I thought you knew what you were talking about. Quite a surly fellow, that Frankenstein. Oh, no. Well, what's his assumed name in this movie? Finner? Mr. Finner?
I think it was Fenner. I think.
That's a little bit more subtle for him than he's used to doing. Dr. Frank, yeah. Dr. Stein, not even doctor, just Mr. Finner. Just some dude.
So hitting a couple of high points in terms of the plot. So once Frankenstein blackmails Carl and Anna to help him kidnap Brand, however you say it. The escape does not go smoothly. After the chase from the dogs, he ends up having a heart attack. So they have to change their plan a little bit. And that's when they decide that they're going to go get Richter and use his body. They successfully do that off screen, I believe.
Oh no, they give us the
switching.
video of sawing his skull open. Right?
Okay. Yeah. I'm talking about the actual switch. I think they normally show a little more.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
And then they're going to fix the brain. And apparently there was pressure in the old skull. So in the new skull, they put this little skull cap thingy on him, and they have to hold something real still, and they drill a hole through the skull. I don't know why they wouldn't have done this. I don't think I understand why they couldn't fix the brain while it was outside of a body. But, whatever.
Had to be done quick. But
well, it was a pretty quick thing. So then he takes a big needle once the hole drilled, and it looks like he jams it about 6 to 12 inches in the brain to kill the dead cells, or the bad cells, whatever they phrased it.
There's no way he could have known what the bad cells were.
Not unless they were a different color.
Alright, it's like the meat that's going bad because it's been in the refrigerator too long, it gets brown or something.
Yeah, he just scrape off the brown part.
Okay, yeah.
And then they tape him up, basically. And they never really explained what was wrong with him before, but he would just kind of sit in his chair and not communicate with anybody, and his hands were kind of all twisted up. I think that was just more for visual effect. But it does appear to work. And he seems to be cured.
He's able to respond to questions with hand motions while he's taped up, mummy style.
Now, while this is all going down, another unnecessary but hilarious type scene happens. So they take the body they don't need. Which one? I get these names messed up.
Dr. Brandt's body.
Brand's old body. They bury it in the garden. And wouldn't you know, a water main burst.
Ugh. How about that?
This creates a nice scene where Anna gets to show off her quick thinking. She yells at her visitor to get her out of the house, drags the body behind some other bushes. Frankenstein comes home, says, "What's going on here? My garden's ruined." It was kind of funny. Funnier on the film. Not as much to talk about, I don't think.
Well, it's the sort of deal where there was a neighbor who, I'm not sure why they just ran in to the garden. I'm not sure how visible it would be from the street because it looks like it's fenced off pretty well. And she says, I've already called the plumber. And when Dr. Brandt's hand came out of the ground, it was really flailing. I thought it was a hallucination scene at first. Like it was going to be revealed as a dream sequence, that this is what haunts Anna for being caught up in this sordid affair. But no, that was just the guy coming out of the ground. And and they get and she hides him in the bushes while the plumbing crew comes in and digs a massive hole in the garden and fixes it. And Frankenstein comes up and sees it, and Anna just points behind the bushes as if to suggest this is where I've hidden it. It's an odd little scene. I sort of feel like that scene was in there to put the female lead in a wet shirt. That strikes me as more on brand. That's why they wanted it in the movie.
Yeah, might be right. Might be right.
But it is funny, though. I mean, it's like, unexpected, but funny.
Yeah, and I mean, really not necessary. Like, it did add to the runtime.
Does that happen before or after the police are searching for Dr. Richter? And they're searching every building in the town.
I think it's before.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely sure.
Well, there's the whole sequence of it's not Inspector Big Boy Gadget, not Fritch, but it's a sergeant. And he's got another guy, and they search upstairs. And the sergeant asks Anna, didn't this boarding house have a cellar? And he checks one door, and it's a closet. And the reason he never notices the other door is because they took the knob off it, that it's located under the stairway. And they have Carl pretending, well, I guess he really is painting it as part of a restoration or a redecoration. And the sergeant is really suspicious because he recognizes Carl, and he recognizes what a terrible job he's doing on the restoration. But he never goes back to check any city plans, which I'm sure he probably could do, about finding out if that boarding house really does have a cellar or not.
Yeah.
Because somehow Ella is able to do archival research with the newspaper microfilms, or actual print copies that she had. And she's able to find a political cartoon of Dr. Frankenstein and Dr. Brandt, right? I guess she would have remembered that if her husband showed up in a paper like that.
No, it was I like that. It was a nice illustration. They did well. Yeah, so that leads into the next kind of important plot point is I forgot her name. Ella recognizing Frankenstein in the street, going and doing her research, and realizing that he's probably involved. But then
she makes a house call.
Yeah, so she makes a house call. She goes, and Frankenstein makes a quick decision. Now, thankfully for Frankenstein, he had just fixed the husband and had just found that he was becoming responsive. So he had the bone that he could throw her. And he brought her in, says, "Hey, I was just about to call you." And basically his face is covered, so she can't see him. Probably still should recognize it's a different body, but whatever. We can play along. And she leaves feeling very hopeful, and he tells her to come back anytime to visit, and probably by the end of the week, you'll have your husband back. And then as she leaves, he yells to Carl, "Pack up everything, we're leaving now."
After Anna gets me coffee. He should have said that first. Anna, get me coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Carl, pack up everything, we're leaving. Anna, pack the coffee.
Yeah. So in case the audience is watching this movie and gets confused as to why he's running, he never told her that he gave the guy a new body. So
Don't worry, we respectfully buried the old one in the garden, but then we had a problem, so it's upstairs right now.
Yeah, I'm sure the upstairs smells great.
Oh man.
So they get into the little horse and carriage and they run away from home, and they're feeding the guy through a milk tube. Looks like. I hope it's milk. I don't know what else it would be. Some kind of weird vitamin.
They were doing that.
And then when the wife visits the next day, she has to kind of sneak in. She sees everybody's gone. She's obviously upset. Calls the inspector and the police. And they come search the house. Eventually they find her actual husband's body. And we don't see most of them again.
We
see Ella. Yeah.
Yeah, not Ella either, I suppose. So.
Well, we see her in the house.
Yeah, Ella's in the house. Sorry.
Yeah. So they take this to the old abandoned house at an undisclosed location, but far enough away that it needs a horse to get you there. And Carl and Anna are trying to come up with a plan to escape. Well, Frankenstein's recognizing that he has very limited time. He needs to wake up the guy quicker than he would have wanted. So he starts that process. And then Anna goes in there to get something needed to escape. And she happens to be in there when the monster... I'm going to put monster in quotes, just because I keep forgetting his name, and I'm not sure to reference him by the brain or the body.
He's very articulate for a guy who just woke up with a new body.
Yeah. So he wakes up. He has obviously a massive migraine going on. He kind of freaks her out, obviously. She freaks him out, obviously. And after a misunderstanding, she stabs him, and he runs off. And she is scared and sitting on the stairs, holding the knife. Apparently some level of shock. But yeah. And then Frankenstein and Carl get into a fight in the stable where they fight like very
it ain't
sad
great.
little men.
Yeah, it's kind of rough.
It's like you get two 5th grade boys, give them a stick and tell them to go at it. And that's kind of the way that fight went. Ultimately, Carl, if I'm not mistaken, he kind of gets knocked out temporarily. Frankenstein runs back in, sees some blood where the monster got stabbed. Eventually finds Anna with a knife. He's pissed off. Takes her out real quick. She didn't put up a fight.
I really wanted her to get some revenge on Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Too bad.
And then then Carl eventually staggers in, finds Anna. So everybody's just real upset with each other at this point.
Let me complain about the movie again at this point. This is the last 25 minutes or so when all this is happening. The monster has been awoken. The movie really should pick up the pace here and never relent. It feels like it goes to an immediate halt on the momentum because we get the creature who travels quietly to his old home, the Brandt home, and he basically watches his wife while she sleeps a while, and he has time to write a letter, goes through his library. This is at the climax of this movie. Anna is dead on the steps, and Carl sees her. And sure, Carl's gonna swear revenge against Frankenstein if he already didn't have it in his mind. But Carl never realizes Frankenstein raped Anna. So he has no special motivation to do anything. There you go.
Yeah. No, you're right. And then part of the pacing problem may be the fact that Peter Cushing and Simon Ward are in their 50s. Or I assume
Maybe
that they're close to their 50s. They're not exactly, big physical specimens. We'll put it that way.
69.
So, and one's been stabbed, and one got into a bar fight with a small child. So they're wounded, and that may be part of it. And then maybe just because it's a British film, but they had to get a diatribe from the monster, being all sad because his wife didn't know him, and then rejected. No, I agree. I wish the fight at the very end was better when we get to that.
I counted it up.
Still a high
That was
point,
4.5 minutes of Frankenstein interacting with Brandt. 4.5 minutes of them having a tit to tot with each other.
Yeah. So to set this up, Frankenstein goes to Brandt's house. Brandt goes to his house, one, to see his wife, but also because he knows Frankenstein's going to go there. So he kind of knows this is it's like if you lose your kid in the mall, like you say, hey, if we get lost, meet up at this spot. So they both basically get the same idea that we're going to meet up at this spot. And then Carl, I don't even know why he knows where Brandt lives, but he goes to that spot too, ultimately. So he like he mentioned, he goes in, sees Ella sleeping, doesn't wake her up because he knows that's not a good idea. Leaves her a note to slow down the pace. Hides behind a dressing, the equivalent of a dressing curtain.
Yeah.
Then waits for her to wake up, which they show some of that on film. It's again dragging it out. She sees the note. She quickly becomes convinced that he is her husband's brain. It never quite becomes clear if she buys everything, but I think she knew enough of the work that he was doing. I think she almost had this mentality of you're reaping what you sowed.
Yeah.
You do monstrous work, you become a monster. And I was married to the original guy, but I ain't claiming his body. I don't like it so much. So, and then he kind of locks her in there to somewhat successfulness and says, I'll let you out when the time is right.
Is a theme of this movie. Lots of kidnapping going on.
Well, in his defense, he just doesn't want her to go to the police before Frankenstein gets there and he has time to settle things.
Yeah, he's setting a trap. It's Home Alone.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think she's fine. Once he explains that, she seems more willing to sit around for a little bit. Let the game play out, so to speak. Obviously, she doesn't like Frankenstein any more than he does. So, and then Frankenstein gets there, and it is like a game of mousetrap. It's like basically like pick the right door, and then every time he went to the wrong door, he threw a firebomb at it and set that door on fire.
I don't remember Mousetrap being played that way. I kind of wish it was, though.
Well, the game of Mousetrap, it took so long to set the game up,
That's the whole reason. You just wanted to turn the crank a few times, see if you could make it work. So I guess those are kerosene lamps that he's just throwing and they explode upon impact?
I think so.
I didn't say kerosene lamps did that, but never tossed one before.
I mean, they could have just found him a fire flower. Could have Super Mario'd up.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Our 4.5 minute climax, it looks pretty cool because everything is catching on fire, which I do like. And then Carl shows up, opens the door, and he immediately gets shot by Brandt. I thought I was in a different movie when that happened. Clue. I thought I was watching Clue or something like that. Maybe a Mel Brooks film.
Yeah, so Frankenstein's trying to get out, and then Brandt pulls the gun and is aiming it at him, and that's when Carl comes in and gets shot. So Barty Fife lost his bullet at that point. And then Frankenstein, I don't know if it's the right order, but he eventually is able to get out of the house with the files by setting some other papers on fire and shoving them in the monster's mouth for a minute, or face.
That was good. I like that.
That's a nice little scene. Nice visual effect with no CGI back in the day. And he gets out, but then Carl gets into a fight with Frankenstein.
He trips him.
I will say, at this point, what's the villain's name in Inspector Gadget?
Dr. Claw.
I think Frankenstein had a Dr. Claw kind of vibe. Like, he just kept getting in his own way at the end. But gets tripped up. They get into a little slap fight. Ultimately, the
Carl
creature comes
even
out.
manages to get on top of him, and then immediately Creature Brant comes out and kicks Carl in the stomach to get him out of the way.
Yeah, so then the creature picks up Dr. Frankenstein, throws him over his shoulder, carries him into the house, to the burning house, which at this point is completely up in flames. And the movie
All
goes to credits.
Frankenstein can do is plead for his life. Maybe he's
Don't
pleading for the
do it!
papers.
Let me go! Let me go!
Yeah.
And like I said, I liked a lot of the movie. I hear all your criticisms and they're fair. If there's no Peter Cushing in this movie, this is an atrocious movie. But
I'm
it
only
did have
upset
Peter Cushing.
I'm only upset because the setup had a lot going for it. And it fell apart after the halfway point, and I don't feel like it should have. But
Yeah. So I wrote down a quote. This is when Frankenstein first gets in the house, and this is the monster says, "I fancy that I am the spider, and you are the fly, Frankenstein. What you want is on the desk in my study. The game is for you to try to get it." And then every time he went to the wrong door, he'd shoot a fireball at him.
I like that. That is definitely not something that was in the original novel, but just the idea that the creature hates Frankenstein so much that he torments him at every turn. That is a thematic parallel with the book.
It's got good stuff in it. It's just not very well executed. I would be curious to know if the distributor hadn't gotten involved and it was about 10 minutes shorter. Um, if we would feel differently. I do think there's
Maybe.
something to be said about Inspector Gadget's humor, though it's not integrated all that well.
He's not present in the climax of the film. That's the other
Yeah, he
thing.
doesn't even show up. Like he doesn't even show up and see Carl. Like we assume Carl lives. He may have
Yeah.
had a busted spleen. Who knows?
Busted pride.
So I think we're gonna do the last Hammer film with Peter Cushing next time. Is that correct? I think we
That's
decided
my
that.
plan. That has a much more impressive creature design. Yeah, the
Yeah.
monster from hell, which begins in an asylum. Interestingly enough, this one also began in an asylum.
Paint by numbers.
I wanted to point out one scene in this movie that I don't. The first time I watched, I didn't grasp the significance of why they would have had it in there, but when Frankenstein successfully executes the brain transfer and he's got Carl there helping him, Carl says it's astonishing. Frankenstein says, "No, not astonishing, merely advanced. It's the natural progress of surgery that any human organ can be transferred to any other body. Your square-headed or dunder-headed scientists just won't accept that." And I said, "Huh, that does seem a little bit commentary there." And I had to look it up. And the first ever human organ transplant, if I recall, was a kidney. And that was done in 1953 or 1954. And by the end of the 1960s, you'd had transfers of human liver, pancreas, and even a heart. So by the time this movie comes out in 1969, they are portraying Dr. Frankenstein as an advanced medical thinker. Even though this movie is theoretically set in the 1800s, he's not wrong in that. Just the organ transplants. But in the 1800s, all of that would have been considered by most medical
Witchcraft.
experts something of sorcery or
Yeah.
witchcraft.
So Adam, in 100 years, well, I can't say 100 years because we won't live that long. In 40 years, maybe we're still around,
Yeah.
and they're able to freeze the brain and put it in a newly, I'm not sure where the body comes from, but they can plant the brain into the new body. Are we going to have an Adam Winters 2.0?
No, Ted Williams' family tried that sort of thing, and that creeped me out when I read about it in Sports Illustrated in the 1990s.
How long do
His
you think you
family
can?
was.
How long do you think you can freeze a brain before you get freezer burned?
I know my hamburger meat, after I put it in the refrigerator for a few weeks, it's really wet. I'm sure I'm not doing it perfect, but I get wet hamburger meat when I get it out of the freezer and get it unsawed. It's not quite the same as when you just buy it from the store or you go home and cook it.
That is true. You might get a little downgrade in the quality. But yeah. Oh, the world in which we don't live. All right. Well, I think that about does this film. It's been a good series of films to watch in a row. They're different enough where it doesn't get that hard to watch it week after week.
It must be concluded.
Yes. But I think we got 2 films left total though.
Yes, one's a reboot.
Yeah. But
And
all right.
the lady who plays Anna in this movie returns for Horror of Frankenstein as Elizabeth. But we'll get to that sometime later.
Okay. Inspector Gadget show up?
I didn't think so. Been a
I
little
didn't think
while
so
since
either,
I've seen it.
They should have made him in all the movies as a different character.
He's like the Stan Lee of the Hammer universe.
Yes, but he's got to keep the same haircut, so it's very obvious who he is. All right. Well, until next time, thanks everybody, and this podcast must be destroyed.
Dum dum dum.